let's talk about absolute value and then how to solve them when I have an equation with them. So this is sort of the fourth part of REI 3. All right, so what is absolute value? What does it actually mean? So it tells us how far something is from zero, okay? So no, let's take a look a little more here. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, zero, oftentimes we look at and say it's nothing, nada, nil. It doesn't exist, right? But it also oftentimes means the starting point. Like if you think about if you're running a race, you start at 0 meters. You start with the 0 on the clock. And then you count from there, right? You don't start from 1, you start from 0. So it's at that beginning, okay? So if we look at it that way, we can always just look at saying, okay, the absolute value is how far are we from where we began, right? How far are we from where we started, okay? And so let's take a look at this. Well, this is an absolute value symbol, all right? That's what those sort of bars are on the side there. And what it's saying is how far is 7 from the beginning, right? Or how far is 7 from the start? And so unless we're told otherwise, we assume that the starting point is 0. So what we're doing is we're going to say, well, how far is 7 from the start? Well, it's 7 away from the starting point, right? It's 7 spaces away from 0. Okay. Well, if we take a look a little more here, what we could say is we say, well, what about -7? Well, the absolute value of -7, okay, is going to be 7 away from 0 also. Okay. It just happens to be in the opposite direction. Yeah. So let's take a look at, let's see, there's my my graph. So if we want to look at this, we can say, here is 7. Oops, why did I just do that? Here's 7, and here is -7, okay? And if we were to count how far they are away, right? If this is 7 away, but you know what? This is also 7 away. So absolute value means it could be either, it's just how many steps you take away from that you go from 0. It's not necessarily positive or negative. It's just a number sort of without the direction. How many steps? A lot of times people say it's always positive. It just sort of means it's without a direction. It just means it's going 7 steps. All right, so let's take a look at another one. Okay, well now what happens if I have something like this and I say the absolute value of some number is 7? Well then what values are going to work for 7? I mean for x here, okay? So I'm saying what is 7 away from 0? Well, if I look at this, I can say, well, +7. That's obviously 7 away from 0, right? But what I also say is -7 is 7 away from 0. Okay, and so if I'm saying some value x is 7, well, the absolute value is 7, then my solution to that is going to be I can either have +7 or -7 because both of these are 7 spaces away from 0. All right, let's take a look at another one here. So here I have some equation, right? And what I'm saying is I have some number, right? So here's this thing, and it's 5 away from 0. Okay, so I have x plus 2. So x plus 2, and once I've done this, right, once I've added 2, I am now 5 away from 0. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solve this as two different things, right? Because what I said before is if I know the absolute value, if this is saying this is 5 away from 0, that means that x plus 2, right, is either going to be equal to 5, right? Okay, or I'm saying this x plus 2 could be at -5, right? Either one of these two possibilities will work because either this thing, right? Whatever this thing is either 5 away from 0, right? I'm saying if it's 5 away from 0, it could be here or it could be here. Either one of those things, right? I don't know which one it is. And then it's x plus 2. So let's go ahead and solve these independently, all right? And I'm going to solve this. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I'm going to say, okay, x could be 3, right? Could be 3. Or I could look at this, and I could subtract 2 from both sides. And I look at this, I say, or x could be -7, right? Either one of those. Let's try it. Let's plug it back in. So let's see. If I try, I'm saying it's either at -7, right? Or I'm saying it's at +3, right? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, all right, if I plug in 3, right, 3 plus 2 is 5. Is that 5 away from 0? Yes, it is. What if I plug in -7? -7 plus 2, that gives me -5. Is -5 5 away from 0? Yes, indeed it is, okay? And so another way of looking at this is, in this case, what I'm saying is I'm looking for something that is going to be 5, right? So 5 away from 0, okay? And then what I'm doing is I'm increasing this by 2, right? I'm increasing this by 2. So if I had decreased, right? So let's say I increased it by 2, right? So x plus 2 gets me 5 spaces away from 0. Well, what I can really say is when I'm subtracting 2 from both sides, is I'm saying inside of there, I'm going to just go down 2. And notice what that does is it sort of, these still are, they're linked together, right? They're 5 away from 0, but I'm saying before I find out that they're 5, 0, I'm adding 2. So I'm going to drop both of these down 2, okay? And now I am at -7 and 3. So let's try another one. This is a pretty complex one. Why don't we do this? Let's write this one down, okay? And we're going to come back to this one at the end, okay? Actually, no. Let's go ahead and, come back to it at the end. All right, let's try this one. All right, so here I'm saying I have some number, right? I have an absolute value, okay? Some distance from 0. Okay, so I'm some distance from 0, and now once I add 7 to this distance, right, however far this is from 0, then I'm going to go up 7 from there. I'm going to add 7, and I'm going to be at 3. Okay, so that's what this is saying. All right, so let's do this. We'll do x minus 5. We're going to see the absolute value. Okay, this thing, well, if this absolute value, right, here, some distance from 0, but then I add 7, right? And that gets me to 3. Well, in order to figure out what this absolute value is, I'm going to need to subtract this 7 first. Okay, so if I subtract 7 from both sides, then I'm going to get this absolute value is going to be -4. Okay, so I'm saying the distance away from 0 is going to be -4. All right. So if I look at this and I say, okay, that means that x minus 5 must be -4 spaces away from 0. But as I'm thinking about this, the absolute value is a distance, right? And if I look at this, I have a negative, right? Well, a negative is not a distance. I can't have negative distance. I can have negative as far as a direction goes, but in this case, I can't end up getting something out of here that's going to result in a negative number. So in this case, this is not possible. There is no solution. Okay. All right, let's go ahead, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try to do both of these on your own. All right, well, let's start with the first one on the left, okay? So you try doing the one on the left. Go. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So I have some number. I'm going to subtract 5, okay? Then I'm going to look at that distance from 0. Okay, however far I am from there, I'm then going to double that distance. Okay, and once I double that distance, then I'm going to add 4 to it, and now I'm supposed to be at 2. Right. So first thing I'm going to do here is let's subtract 4. Okay, from both sides, so that I get closer to what this distance is from 0. So I'm going to get the absolute value of m minus 5 doubled. Okay, is going to be equal to -2. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide both of these, right? I don't want to know what I don't want. If I take this absolute value and I double it to get to -2, well, I want to know what it is originally. So I'm going to take divide by 2, divide by 2. I'm going to get the absolute value of m minus 5. So that this distance, right, is going to be equal to -1. Okay, and again, here I am with an absolute value of a negative number. That is not possible. So this one has no solution. Okay, now let's try this one. Now, go ahead and let's pause the video and you try this one. Okay, now, one thing that you might do when you look at this is you might look at this and say, ah, look, there's a negative number. This is not possible. Not so fast, okay? Because what we're going to do here is we have an absolute value. Okay, we're going to triple it. Okay, then we're going to take the negative on that, and then we're going to drop 7, and we're going to be at negative 10. Well, let's isolate so that we get just the absolute value and see how far this thing is from 0. Maybe something will work in here to get a negative. Let's try. So first I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Okay? And so we're going to get the absolute value, okay, of this number, some distance from 0. Then we're going to multiply by negative 3, and we're supposed to end up at negative 3. Okay. So now let's divide by negative 3, just like we would with any other variable, and we're going to get the absolute value of n plus 2 is equal to positive 1. Okay, so now what I'm looking for is what values, right? What can n be if I want to make this inside? What values will n be to make this inside one space away from 0? Okay, so then this is possible. I can get one place away from 0. So I'm going to say n plus 2 is equal to positive 1, and n plus 2 must be equal to negative 1, right? Either one of those is going to be true. So then I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I get n is equal to negative 1, or I'm going to get subtract 2 here, subtract 2 there. I'm going to get n is equal to negative 3. Okay, so negative 1 or negative 3 will make this distance 1, right? So let's try it. Plug in negative 1. Negative 1 plus 2 is giving me positive 1, right? Positive 1 times negative 3, right? The absolute value of positive 1 was 1. Times negative 3 is negative 3. Negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10. Excellent. Let's try negative 3. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. The absolute value of that is 1. Negative 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Minus 7 is going to be equal to negative 10. So it does work, and we're in a good spot. So now what I want you to do is I would like you to look back at this one that we did before, and I want you to try to do this one on your own. All right? Do this one on your own. I'm just going to flash up the solution real quick. I'm not going to walk you through it necessarily, so I'm just going to put it up here in a second, but I want you to try to solve it first. Type in your answer, and then I'm going to bring up the solution here. You can take a look at it, and then any questions you have, please bring them to class. Okay, so here's your solution. Go ahead. Copy this down, find if you have any questions here, and bring them to class.